Time was running out, and Robert Wilson knew it in his bones. His hands trembled as he stared at the ceiling of his modest home in rural Minnesota, his heart pounding against his ribs like a warning drum. This was the 5th night in a row he'd woken up at exactly 3:17 a.m., his body drenched in cold sweat, his mind screaming with certainty that something was coming. Something big. At 73, he'd spent enough years in military intelligence to trust his gut. But this wasn't just a gut feeling. This was different. This was like a radio signal being broadcast directly into his brain, growing stronger with each passing night. He grabbed his phone with shaking fingers and dialed his old friend at the Pentagon, not caring about the early hour. "John, it's Bob Wilson. They're coming. 3 days. Maybe 4. Bob, do you know what time it is?" The voice on the other end was groggy, irritated. "We've been through this twice this week already. The satellites show nothing. The deep space arrays show nothing. There's nothing out there. Because they're hiding in ways our technology can't detect," Robert insisted, his voice cracking with urgency. "But we can feel them. We, the old ones, we can sense them." As if to prove his point, Robert's phone started buzzing with incoming messages. His old Air Force buddies, retired commanders, former intelligence officers, all over 60, all reaching out at the same exact moment, all reporting the same thing, an overwhelming sense of approaching danger. "John, turn on your TV. Check the news. I'm not the only one anymore." The line went quiet for a moment, then he heard the soft sound of a television turning on in the background. The breaking news was already running across every major network. Global phenomenon. Thousands of elderly report identical warning dreams, military and scientific communities baffled. "My God," John whispered. "It's happening everywhere. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Sydney." Robert closed his eyes, the sensation of approach growing stronger with each passing second. "We spent our whole lives watching for threats, John. Decades of experience, pattern recognition, gut instincts. Now something's awakened in us. Something that's been sleeping in human DNA for thousands of years, waiting for this moment." He walked to his window and looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere up there, hidden from our best technology but not from human intuition, the greatest threat humanity had ever faced was approaching. And somehow, through means no one yet understood, the most overlooked segment of Earth's population had become its first line of defense. "They thought we were past our prime," Robert said quietly. "They thought we were just waiting to die. But they were wrong, John. The universe is about to learn a very important lesson. When humans sense danger, especially humans who've spent a lifetime learning to trust their instincts, the universe better pay attention." The warning signal in his mind spiked sharply, and Robert gasped. 3 days, John. Get everyone ready. They're coming." He hung up the phone and watched as lights began turning on in houses all along his street. In every home, someone over 60 was waking up with the same certainty, the same warning drumming in their minds. Humanity's elderly had become its early warning system, and the countdown to first contact had begun. Within 24 hours, the world had changed. Emergency meetings were being held in every major government as reports flooded in from across the globe. In retirement communities, nursing homes, and quiet suburban neighborhoods, millions of people over 60 had begun experiencing the same unexplainable sensations. At the hastily assembled command center in Washington, D.C., Robert Wilson sat among a group of elderly advisors, each chosen for their military or scientific background. The room buzzed with an energy that reminded him of his active duty days, but this time, the youngest person present was 62. "The sensation is getting stronger," said Dr. Chen, a retired quantum physicist from Beijing who had been flown in hours earlier. At 75, her hands were gnarled with arthritis, but her eyes sparkled with fierce intelligence. "It's like a pressure building in the back of my mind. They're getting closer." Around the room, heads nodded in agreement. They could all feel it, that constant awareness of approaching danger, growing stronger with each passing hour. On the wall-mounted screens, news reports showed similar gatherings happening in other countries. The elderly, once sidelined by society, had suddenly become humanity's most crucial resource. "Our satellite systems still show nothing," reported General Thompson, one of the few younger officers present. "Whatever's coming, it's completely invisible to our technology. Without you people," he gestured to the room of seniors, "we'd be completely blind." Robert stood up slowly, his joints protesting the movement. "We need to coordinate with other countries. This thing we're feeling, it's not just a general sense of danger anymore. I'm starting to get impressions. Specific details." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. An elderly woman in the corner, a retired Navy code breaker, spoke up. "They're using some kind of phase technology. That's why we can't see them. But our brains, our experienced, aged brains, somehow they can sense the disturbance in space." Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. It's like our lifetime of pattern recognition has combined with something deeper, something in our DNA that activates with age. The more years we've lived, the stronger our ability to sense them becomes." The screens suddenly lit up with urgent news alerts. Similar revelations were being reported worldwide. In Japan, a group of elderly monks had drawn identical patterns showing the approaching fleet's formation. In Russia, retired radar operators were reporting consistent sensations of multiple large objects moving in precise military patterns. In Kenya, tribal elders were describing the same formations in their shared dreams. "We need to establish a global network," Robert said firmly. "Every country needs to create advisory councils of their elderly citizens. We need to pool our impressions, compare notes. There's strength in these old minds of ours that we never knew existed." General Thompson was already making calls. Within hours, a secure global communication network was established, connecting elderly advisory groups from every nation. Political differences were set aside as governments worldwide recognized the unprecedented nature of the situation. In nursing homes, retirement communities, and veteran centers, the residents who had once been viewed as merely waiting out their final years were now being treated with newfound respect. Their decades of experience, combined with this mysterious new ability, had transformed them from society's margins to its first line of defense. As night fell over Washington, Robert stood at the window of the command center, feeling the steady pulse of approaching danger in his mind. The sensation was clearer now, more focused. He could almost see them, vast ships moving through the darkness between stars, their phase technology making them invisible to instruments but not to the evolved intuition of human elders. "They thought age made us weak," he muttered, watching as military vehicles escorted more elderly advisors into the building. "They didn't realize that every wrinkle, every gray hair, every year we've lived has been preparing us for this moment." In his mind, the warning signal pulsed stronger, and around him, every other senior in the room straightened, feeling it too. They were coming, and humanity's eldest guardians were ready to prove that wisdom, experience, and evolved human intuition were about to become the most powerful weapons in the universe. The morning of first contact arrived with an intensity that made every elderly advisor worldwide gasp at the same moment. In the Washington Command Center, Robert Wilson gripped his chair as the sensation nearly overwhelmed him. "They were here. They're dropping out of their faster-than-light travel," he announced, his voice steady despite the pressure building in his mind. Around him, other elderly advisors nodded in agreement, their faces tense with concentration. "They'll appear just beyond the moon's orbit." Military commanders worldwide had already positioned their forces based on the elders' guidance. Aircraft carriers had moved into strategic locations. Fighter jets waited on runways. Ground-based defense systems were ready. For the first time in history, the world's military forces were operating under the direction of those who most societies had considered past their prime. 30 seconds, called out Dr. Chen, her eyes closed as she focused on the approaching presence. They think they're completely hidden. They have no idea we can sense them. The massive screens in the command center showed empty space near the moon. But every person over 60 in the room could feel the enormous vessels taking position, their phase technology making them invisible to all conventional detection methods. Now, Robert whispered. At that exact moment, ripples appeared in the seemingly empty space on the screens. The alien ships began to materialize, massive, dark vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their surfaces were smooth, designed to be undetectable, but now they faced a world prepared for their arrival. By the stars, came a transmission in perfect English, broadcasting on all frequencies. How did you know? Robert leaned forward to the microphone that would carry his voice to the alien fleet. We've been expecting you. Your phase technology is impressive, but you didn't account for human intuition. Particularly the intuition of those who've spent decades learning to recognize threats. There was a long pause from the alien vessels. When the response came, there was clear confusion in the alien commander's voice. Impossible. We've conquered 37 worlds. Our phase technology is perfect. No detection system has ever. We didn't use technology to detect you, Robert interrupted. We used something far more powerful, human experience combined with our species' evolved ability to sense danger. The very people you thought would be the weakest link in our defense turned out to be our strongest asset. On screens worldwide, people watched as Earth's military forces moved into perfect positioning around the alien fleet. Guided by the elderly advisor's sensory abilities, each ship and weapon system had been placed exactly where it needed to be. You have two choices, Robert continued, his voice carrying the weight of his 73 years of experience. You can leave peacefully, or you can learn firsthand why it's unwise to underestimate humans, especially old humans who've spent their entire lives learning to trust their instincts. The alien ships hung motionless in space. Their perfect invasion strategy, tested successfully on dozens of worlds, had been completely undermined by something their advanced civilization had never considered, the power of evolved human intuition combined with decades of life experience. Your species is unique, the alien commander finally responded. In all our conquests, we've never encountered a population segment that could sense us through our phase technology. How is this possible? Dr. Chen spoke up, her voice clear and strong. Your technology may be advanced, but you don't understand the power of time. Each year we live, each experience we gather, shapes our brains in ways you never considered. What you see as weakness, our age, is actually the source of our strength. Around the world, elderly people continued to provide real-time information about the alien fleet's every movement. Every subtle shift in position, every power surge in their weapon systems, was instantly sensed and reported. The aliens found themselves facing an enemy that could predict their every move before they made it. The tension in space stretched like a taut wire as humanity waited to see how the aliens would respond. And in that moment, the universe learned a vital lesson: when dealing with humans, never assume that age diminishes power. Sometimes, it only makes it stronger. The United Nations Assembly Hall had never seen a gathering quite like this before. Instead of politicians in suits, the seats were filled with elderly people from every corner of the world. Former teachers sat next to retired military officers. Old factory workers shared space with retired scientists. Their combined age represented thousands of years of human experience. Robert Wilson looked around the room with pride. This was the newly formed World Elder Council, humanity's response to the ongoing alien crisis. The alien fleet remained in orbit, their ships still mostly phase-shifted but clearly visible to every person over 60 in the room. They're testing our defenses, announced Mrs. Patel, a retired mathematics teacher from Mumbai. At 82, she had spent decades recognizing patterns in numbers, and now those pattern recognition skills had evolved into something far more powerful. Every 6 hours, they shift their formation slightly, watching how we respond. They're also scanning our cities, added Mr. Thompson, a retired construction worker from Australia. I can feel their sensors passing over our power plants, our water supplies. His weathered face creased with concentration. 70 years of building things has taught me how systems work. I can sense what they're looking for. The military commanders present listened intently, taking notes. Over the past week, they had learned to trust these elderly advisors completely. Every prediction, every warning, had proven accurate. Dr. Chen stepped to the podium, her small frame barely visible above it. We've begun to understand why only we can sense them, she announced. Our brains have spent decades building neural networks, creating patterns of recognition. When combined with the dormant defensive abilities in human DNA, it creates something unique in the universe, a biological detection system that no technology can fool. On the massive screens behind her, data scrolled showing how the elderly advisor's warnings had helped position Earth's defenses perfectly. Not a single alien probe or scan had gone undetected. Every attempted infiltration had been spotted and stopped, not by technology, but by the intuition of people who had spent lifetimes learning to trust their instincts. But we're more than just an early warning system, Robert added, standing slowly. Each of us brings something special to this council. Our retired teachers understand learning patterns, they can sense when the aliens are gathering information. Our former builders and engineers can feel their technology at work. Our retired doctors sense their biological differences. The room buzzed with energy as more council members shared their insights. A retired farmer from Kenya could sense disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field caused by alien scanning. A former air traffic controller from Canada could visualize the complex patterns of alien ship movements. Each person's lifetime of experience had become a unique lens through which they could perceive the alien presence. They're watching us right now, announced a quiet voice from the back. Everyone turned to see Mrs. Wong, a retired librarian from Singapore. They're trying to understand how we detect them. But they're looking for technology, for machines. They don't understand that we're using something far older, human wisdom combined with our species' natural survival instincts. As if confirming her words, the alien fleet shifted again. Every elder in the room felt it, each perceiving the movement through the unique filter of their life experiences. Within seconds, a complete picture of the aliens' activities emerged, built from hundreds of different perspectives. This is why they can't defeat us, Robert said, his voice filled with quiet pride. They expected to find a divided world of separate nations. Instead, they found humanity united, led by its eldest members. Every person in this room represents decades of learning, of observing, of understanding how things work. Together, we're more powerful than any technology they possess. The council session continued late into the night, as the elders shared their insights and perceptions. In every corner of the world, similar councils were meeting, their members linked by their shared ability and guided by lifetimes of accumulated wisdom. The aliens might have mastered space travel and phase technology, but they were learning a crucial lesson: there is no technology in the universe more powerful than the combined wisdom of countless human lifetimes. The retirement community's recreation room had been transformed into something that looked like a cross between a military command center and a cozy living room. Comfortable armchairs sat beside high-tech monitoring equipment, and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the hum of sophisticated computers. Robert Wilson watched as elderly residents worked alongside young military personnel, each bringing their unique strengths to the task at hand. The scene was being repeated in senior communities worldwide, as humanity discovered that its greatest defense lay in the minds of those it had once sidelined. "There's something different about their engine signature today," said Bill, a retired auto mechanic. His gnarled hands, which had spent 50 years feeling the subtle vibrations of engines, now traced patterns in the air as he described the alien ship's movements. They're running at a higher frequency. Planning something big. The young lieutenant next to him quickly relayed this information to command. Over the past weeks, they had learned that Bill's lifetime of mechanical intuition translated perfectly to sensing alien technology. He couldn't explain the scientific principles behind their propulsion systems, but he could feel when something wasn't right. Across the room, Ruth, a former kindergarten teacher, sat with her eyes closed. "They're learning," she said softly. "I can feel their patterns changing." 40 years of watching children learn gives you a sense for these things. She opened her eyes and looked at the military observers. "They're adapting their strategies, trying to find new ways around our defenses." Dr. Chen, who had been analyzing data patterns, nodded in agreement. "Each of us senses them differently, through the lens of our life experiences. The aliens don't understand that every year we've lived has been preparing us for this moment." The screens showed the alien fleet, still mostly phase-shifted but clearly visible to the elderly observers. Their ships had been probing Earth's defenses for weeks, trying to understand how their perfect invasion strategy had been undermined by the most unexpected of defenders. "It's like a lifetime of putting together puzzles," explained James, a retired postal worker. "After 40 years of sorting mail and finding patterns in addresses and routes, you develop an intuition. Now I can see the patterns in their ship movements, predict where they'll go next." The younger military personnel listened with growing respect. Initially skeptical, they had learned that these elderly advisors provided information that no technology could match. Each person's lifetime of experience had become a unique tool for understanding and predicting alien behavior. In a corner, Grace, a retired nurse, suddenly straightened in her chair. "Their biosignatures are changing," she announced. 30 years of reading patient vital signs tells me they're under stress. They're not used to being detected, being understood. It's affecting them physically." Robert smiled as he watched the information flow. Every person in the room, once considered past their prime, was contributing vital intelligence. The auto mechanic's understanding of engines, the teacher's knowledge of learning patterns, the nurse's experience with biological signs, each lifetime of accumulated wisdom had become a weapon more powerful than any technology. "We've spent our whole lives learning," he said to the young lieutenant who had become his regular partner. "Every job, every hobby, every experience, it all left marks on our brains, created patterns of understanding. Now those patterns have become something the aliens never expected, a detection system they can't defeat because it's based on human wisdom, not technology." Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the retirement community's peaceful grounds. But inside, the work continued. Elderly minds reached out, sensing, understanding, protecting. Each person contributed their unique perspective, built from decades of life experience. The aliens had expected to find a vulnerable population. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand, one whose power came not from advanced technology, but from the accumulated wisdom of countless human lifetimes. And with each passing day, that wisdom grew stronger, proving that the twilight years of life could be the most powerful of all. The mood in the World Elder Council's strategy room had shifted. After weeks of defensive operations, something new stirred in the collective consciousness of Earth's elderly guardians. They weren't just sensing the aliens anymore, they were beginning to understand them. "Their phase technology has a rhythm to it," Robert Wilson explained, standing before a holographic display of the alien fleet. "Like a heartbeat, or a dance step." His fingers moved through the air, conducting an invisible orchestra. "After 50 years of playing chess, you learn to see patterns in your opponent's strategy. They're strong, but they're not perfect." Dr. Chen nodded from her station, where she had been correlating data from elderly observers worldwide. "Every technology has its limits," she said, her eyes bright with understanding. We've spent weeks learning their patterns, their habits. Now it's time to use that knowledge. The assembled military commanders leaned forward as Mrs. Patel, the retired mathematics teacher, stepped up to the display. Their ships maintain perfect formation even while phase shifted, she explained. Too perfect. After teaching geometry for 40 years, I can tell you, they rely too much on precision. That's their weakness. Around the world, similar revelations were emerging from elderly observers. A retired dance instructor in Brazil recognized vulnerable patterns in the aliens' movement formations. A former chess champion in Russia identified predictable sequences in their tactical responses. Each insight came not from advanced technology, but from decades of human experience. We're ready, Robert announced, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. It's time to show them that wisdom can be a weapon. The counterattack plan that emerged was unlike anything in military history. It didn't rely on overwhelming force or advanced technology. Instead, it was built on the combined insight of thousands of elderly minds, each contributing their lifetime of pattern recognition and intuitive understanding. Former air traffic controllers coordinated the movement of Earth's defenders, their decades of experience guiding ships through complex formations. Retired musicians helped identify the harmonics that could disrupt the aliens' phase technology, their trained ears detecting subtle frequencies that computers missed. They're not ready for this, said Bill, the retired mechanic, as the plan was set in motion. They understand machines, but they don't understand people. Especially old people who've spent lifetimes learning how things really work. The attack began at dawn. Guided by the elderly advisors, Earth's forces moved in seemingly chaotic patterns that actually followed deep, intuitive rhythms. The aliens' perfect formations were disrupted by movements they couldn't predict, couldn't understand. It's like teaching a difficult class, Ruth, the former kindergarten teacher, explained as she guided a squadron of fighters. You learn to see the patterns, to know what's coming before it happens. These aliens, for all their technology, are like children who only know one way to solve a problem. The alien fleet's perfect coordination began to break down. Their phase technology, disrupted by frequencies discovered by elderly musicians and sound engineers, flickered uncertainly. Their formations, challenged by tactics based on decades of human strategic experience, started to show gaps. Look at their response, Robert said, watching the battle unfold. They're trying to adapt, but they can't understand what they're facing. How do you fight an enemy whose strength comes from 70, 80, 90 years of accumulated wisdom? In orbit, the alien ships struggled against an attack they couldn't comprehend. Their advanced technology, their perfect tactics, meant nothing against the intuitive understanding of thousands of elderly minds working in harmony. Each human life had become a library of experience, and together they were writing a new chapter in the history of warfare. Send the message, Robert commanded as the alien fleet began to retreat. Let them know that this is just the beginning. That every day, more of us are awakening to this ability. That human wisdom, combined with our natural intuition, is a force they can never hope to overcome. As the aliens fell back, their perfect formations shattered, the universe learned another vital lesson: never underestimate the power of a lifetime of experience. In the end, wisdom proved stronger than any weapon, and the aged minds of Earth had become its most powerful defense. The research facility outside Geneva hummed with activity as elderly observers worked alongside scientists, trying to understand the remarkable ability that had saved Earth from invasion. Banks of specialized equipment recorded brain patterns, while holographic displays showed real-time neural activity maps. Robert Wilson sat in a comfortable scanning chair, his eyes closed as Dr. Chen and her team monitored his brain's response to the alien presence he could still sense in orbit. After weeks of defensive operations and successful counterattacks, humanity was finally beginning to understand the science behind their unexpected advantage. It's fascinating, Dr. Chen said, studying the neural imaging displays. Your brain has created entirely new neural pathways over the decades. Each experience, each pattern you've learned, has literally shaped your mind. She pointed to areas lighting up on the display. When you sense the aliens, these pathways activate in unique combinations. Like a lifetime of practice finally paying off, Robert suggested, opening his eyes to look at the scans. Exactly. Dr. Chen's excitement was contagious. Think of it like this: younger brains are like new computers, fast and efficient but limited by their programming. But your brains, the elderly brains, are like computers that have spent decades learning, adapting, creating new connections. When this ability awakened in human DNA, it found much more sophisticated neural networks to work with. Around the facility, other elderly volunteers were undergoing similar tests. Mrs. Patel, the retired mathematics teacher, demonstrated how her brain processed alien movement patterns differently from younger observers. Bill, the auto mechanic, showed unique neural responses when sensing alien technology. The human brain continues to develop throughout life, explained a neurologist from India, pointing to comparative scans. Each experience creates new connections. What we're seeing is these lifetime neural networks activating in response to an ability that's been dormant in human DNA for thousands of years. The scientific breakthrough had come when they realized that human intuition wasn't just a vague concept, it was the result of the brain building increasingly sophisticated pattern recognition systems over decades of life. The alien sensing ability tapped into these systems, turning lifetime experience into a powerful detection tool. Look at this, Dr. Chen said, displaying a new set of scans. When a younger person tries to sense the aliens, they get only basic impressions. But your brains light up like Christmas trees, using neural pathways built from years of experience to process and understand the information. Robert watched as more test results came in from elderly observers worldwide. Each person's brain had developed unique neural patterns based on their life experiences. Former pilots showed strong activation in areas related to spatial awareness. Retired doctors displayed heightened sensitivity to biological signals. Every career, every hobby, every life experience had literally shaped their brains in ways that enhanced this newfound ability. It's like we've spent our whole lives training for this without knowing it, Ruth said from her testing station. Every lesson we learned, every pattern we recognized, every problem we solved, it all prepared us for this moment. The scientific team was particularly fascinated by how the ability strengthened with age. People in their 60s showed good sensitivity, but those in their 70s and 80s demonstrated even more sophisticated perception. Their lifetime of accumulated wisdom had created increasingly complex neural networks that the alien sensing ability could utilize. This changes everything we thought we knew about aging, Dr. Chen announced to the assembled observers. Your brains aren't declining, they're evolving. Each year of experience adds new layers of understanding, new patterns of recognition. When combined with this dormant human ability, it creates something unprecedented in the universe. As the day's testing concluded, Robert stood at the facility's window, watching the sunset. In his mind, he could still sense the alien fleet, their movements now as clear to him as written words. Every experience in his long life, from military service to weekend hobbies, had contributed to his ability to understand these patterns. We're not just sensing them anymore, he said to Dr. Chen as she joined him at the window. We're showing the universe that human wisdom, built over decades of life, is more powerful than any technology. Each day we live, each experience we gain, makes us stronger. The scientific evidence was clear. Humanity's elderly population had become its greatest asset, their lifetime of experiences transformed into an unprecedented defense system. The universe was learning that true power doesn't come from advanced technology, but from the wisdom that only time and experience can provide. The warning came from an 86-year-old woman in a small nursing home in New Zealand. They're gathering their strength, she announced during her morning tea. Within minutes, elderly observers worldwide confirmed her warning. the alien fleet was preparing for one final, desperate assault. In the World Elder Council's command center, Robert Wilson felt the change in the aliens' presence. After months of failed attempts to overcome Earth's elderly defenders, the aliens had decided to risk everything on one massive attack. "They're trying something new," Bill said from his monitoring station, his mechanic's intuition sensing subtle changes in the alien ship's energy patterns. "Their engines are running hotter than we've ever seen before." Dr. Chen's scientific team quickly confirmed what the elderly observers were sensing. The alien fleet was pushing their phase technology beyond its normal limits, attempting to become even more undetectable to conventional sensors. "They think if they push their technology hard enough, they can overcome our natural abilities," Robert said, shaking his head. "They still don't understand what they're really fighting against." Around the world, elderly observers mobilized with a speed that would have seemed impossible just months ago. In retirement communities, nursing homes, and private residences, thousands of senior citizens focus their enhanced perceptions on the approaching threat. "They're attempting to create interference patterns in their phase shifting," reported Mrs. Patel, her mathematician's mind analyzing the complex formations. "Like ripples in a pond canceling each other out." Ruth, the former kindergarten teacher, smiled gently. "But they're trying too hard, like anxious students overthinking a simple problem. The harder they try to hide, the more obvious their presence becomes to us." The alien fleet began its approach, their ships pushing their technology to its limits. To conventional sensors, they were nearly invisible. But to Earth's elderly defenders, they might as well have been lighting up the sky with fireworks. "Their formation has 3 weak points," announced a retired football coach from Brazil, his decades of strategic thinking finding patterns in their approach. "They're so focused on their technology that their basic tactical planning is getting sloppy." Robert coordinated humanity's response, drawing on the combined wisdom of thousands of elderly minds. Former air traffic controllers guided Earth's defensive squadrons into position. Retired musicians helped fine-tune the frequencies that could disrupt the aliens' phase technology. Every person contributed their lifetime of experience to the defense of their world. "Remember," Robert broadcast to the defensive forces, "we're not just fighting with weapons and technology. We're fighting with the wisdom of countless human lifetimes. Every year we've lived, every lesson we've learned, has prepared us for this moment." The alien fleet struck with overwhelming force, their ships appearing seemingly from nowhere, except that Earth's elderly defenders had sensed their exact positions long before they materialized. The aliens found their carefully planned attack routes already blocked, their tactical advantages neutralized before they could be used. "It's like a chess game," Robert explained to the younger military commanders as the battle unfolded. "They can only think a few moves ahead, but we've spent decades learning to see the whole board." Around the world, elderly observers provided real-time guidance to Earth's defenders. A retired weather forecaster predicted the aliens' attempt to use Earth's atmosphere to their advantage. A former librarian recognized patterns in their communication signals that revealed their backup plans. Each person's unique life experience became another tool in humanity's defense. The alien fleet's formation began to break apart as their sophisticated technology proved useless against human wisdom and intuition. Their phase-shifted ships, pushing their systems beyond safe limits, started experiencing catastrophic failures. "They need to stand down," Grace, the retired nurse, announced urgently. "Their life support systems are showing dangerous strain. They're risking their own survival now." Robert sent out a final message to the alien fleet: "Your technology has failed. Your tactics have failed. But we're offering you the wisdom that comes with age: know when to step back, learn from your mistakes, and live to try a different approach another day." As the alien fleet retreated, their mighty ships limping away from Earth's defenses, the universe learned its final lesson about humanity. True power doesn't come from technology or weapons, but from the wisdom earned through years of life. Earth's elderly population, once considered past their prime, had become the planet's most powerful defenders, proving that every year of life adds another layer of strength to the human spirit. 1 year after the alien fleet's retreat, the World Elder Council gathered for a special session. The Great Hall was filled not just with elderly advisors, but with representatives from across the galaxy. The aliens, having learned a profound lesson about humanity, had spread word throughout the cosmos about the species that had defeated their perfect invasion plan. Robert Wilson stood at the podium, his presence commanding respect from both human and alien observers. At 74, he looked more vigorous than he had a year ago. The same was true for many of Earth's elderly population. Their newfound importance had given them renewed purpose and energy. "We gather here today not to celebrate a victory," he began, his voice clear and strong, "but to share a lesson that humanity's eldest members have known all along. True strength comes not from technology or weapons, but from wisdom earned through years of living." Dr. Chen presented the scientific findings that had revolutionized understanding of human potential. What we once saw as the sunset years of life, we now recognize as the peak of human capability, she explained to the assembled delegates. Each year lived adds another layer of understanding, another pattern of recognition, another thread of wisdom to the tapestry of human consciousness. Around the world, the changes were evident. Retirement communities had become centers of learning, where younger generations sought out the knowledge and insight of their elders. The ability to sense alien presence had evolved into something broader, a deeper understanding of the universe itself, filtered through decades of human experience. "Our victory taught us something vital," Mrs. Patel added, her mathematician's mind finding patterns in the greater picture. "Age doesn't diminish us, it completes us. Every wrinkle represents a lesson learned. Every gray hair marks another piece of wisdom gained." The alien representatives, humbled by their experience, shared their own revelations. Their civilization had pursued technological advancement above all else, forgetting that true progress comes from the accumulation of wisdom over time. They had learned that the most sophisticated computer could never match the complexity of a mind shaped by decades of lived experience. Ruth, the former kindergarten teacher, smiled as she addressed the gathering. "We spend our youth learning how the world works," she said. "We spend our middle years applying that knowledge. But it's in our elder years that we truly understand the deeper patterns, the connections that youth and technology often miss." The World Elder Council had become more than Earth's defense system, it had become a model for a new way of viewing human potential. Other species, learning of Earth's unique defense, began sending their own elder members to learn from humanity's example. "Look around this room," Robert continued. "Every person here represents decades of learning, of observing, of understanding. We once thought these years were an ending. Now we know they're a beginning, the point where individual experience transforms into universal wisdom." Bill, the retired mechanic who had first sensed the changes in alien engine patterns, demonstrated how his lifetime of practical experience had evolved into an almost supernatural understanding of technology. "It's not about being younger or stronger," he explained. "It's about having the patience and experience to see how things truly work." As the session concluded, Robert stood at the great window overlooking the city. The world below had changed. Society had transformed from one that often sidelined its elderly to one that celebrated and sought out their wisdom. The threat of invasion had revealed humanity's greatest untapped resource, the power of accumulated experience. "We face the future not with fear," he announced to the assembled delegates, "but with the confidence that comes from billions of years of combined human wisdom. Each day, more of us cross the threshold into these years of enhanced understanding. Each moment of life adds to our strength." The alien representatives nodded in understanding. They had come seeking Earth's defense secrets, expecting to find advanced technology. Instead, they found something far more powerful, the simple truth that wisdom, earned through years of living, is the greatest force in the universe. As the sun set on the gathering, its light caught the silver hair of the assembled elders, creating halos of wisdom earned through lifetimes of experience. The universe had learned its lesson: when humans sense danger, the cosmos should pay attention, not because of their weapons or technology, but because of the profound power of their accumulated wisdom. The elderly had become humanity's greatest strength, their years of life experience transformed into a force that no technology could match. And in this transformation, humanity had discovered an eternal truth, that every year of life is a gift, every experience a lesson, and the true power of the human spirit only grows stronger with time.